This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
Tully.
Hey, Tony Schiavone.
Say hello to the great Conrad Thompson.
Oh my gosh. How's it going, Mr. Blanchard? How are you, sir?
Oh, Conrad, I'm Tully, please.
Sorry. Force of habit. I'm Alabama raised, sir. Can't help it.
I understand. But we've met on how many years now? 10?
A while. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
15?
Something like that.
20? That sounds like an awesome year. Oh my.
All right, let's get started. Conrad, you want to start or you want me to?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. A real treat. One of the original four horsemen himself, the Hall of Famer, Mr. Tully Blanchard. Tully, how are you, man?
Doing great, Conrad. Good to hear your voice this morning.
Man, we are so excited to have you on here. We're sort of celebrating all things 1986 on the podcast here with Tony, and we're marching towards Starrcade 86. And when we look back at 1986, we've decided it might be our favorite year in wrestling. Do you feel the same way?
Well, 1986 was a very big year for the Horsemen. It was memorable. The crowds were amazing. I don't think, I can't remember a Coliseum that wasn't sold out whenever we were there. And when business is going good like that, and our TV shows were doing great, because you had the great voice of Tony Schiavone and Gordon Soley on there. And, man, I don't think it could get any better than that.
Tully, we obviously had a lot going on that year. The Great American Bash and the stadiums that we went to, and obviously going to TBS mostly on Saturday mornings to record and then having to go somewhere else that night.
That was so much fun at 10 o'clock in the morning.
You guys always seem like you enjoyed being there that time in the morning. Oh, but really,
oh boy,
really the Horsemen actually began in 85. But 86 was really the year of the Horsemen. That's where you guys made your mark in pro wrestling, right?
I think that's when it started. Because not to jump into the things that we're doing now, Tony, or anything like that, but this is probably the only thing ever in professional wrestling that the wrestling fans generated the name. When Arn called us the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse in that one interview, that was just a thing. That wasn't we're going to be a group. And the wrestling fans started calling us that. And that's why I think that you can, when you put us together and go to an autograph show 35 or 40 years later, you get lines of people because it's a fan-generated thing. And you can't duplicate it. Everybody's tried to duplicate it. And you just can't sit in a creative room and go, oh, I'm going to do this, and we're going to call up this, and it'll be great. They've tried and tried and tried, but it never worked. And I think that it was great when it was Ole and Arn and me and Rick. I think it was so when Luger was just starting in the business. It was, his performance was not where it would have been if he was another 5 or 6 years in the business, but he was there. But the strongest group was definitely when Barry became a bad guy, and Arn and I became the tag team, and Flair and Barry were the singles. You had four of the top performers in all time, and it didn't get better than that.
We're talking a lot about Starrcade 86, and ultimately you're going to wind up in a first blood match with Dusty Rhodes. And, you actually defeat the television champion, Dusty Rhodes, here with, a handful of quarters, I believe. But what do you remember about that match? It's in Greensboro, the spiritual home of Starrcade.
The quarters were somewhere else. I think that maybe we had on film where I actually bled first, and JJ came to the ring very prepared and put Vaseline upon my cut so it didn't look like I had bled. And then we used the shoe to hit Dusty, and he was bleeding. And consequently, with a little bit of sleight of hand from J.J. Dillon, I was fortunate enough to win. Is that close, Tony?
I don't even remember. Sorry.
Okay.
Well, actually, see, I called the whole thing with Bob Cottle, if I recall, but I think I was you guys were in Greensboro, right? And I was in Atlanta. So, Conrad and I, by the way, next week are going to watch the entire show with David Crockett. So we'll be able to verify your story at that time.
Okay.
Not that I don't believe you.
I think I'm close.
Okay. It's not that I don't believe you, because you know what I think about you. Honorable guy.
I get it. It's a wrestling podcast, but he's saving us money on our mortgage. Do you really trust this process? The reviews don't lie. 5-star review after 5-star review. We make it fast, we make it easy, and it's no cost or obligation. Give us a shot to earn your business. I'm telling you, you'll be glad you did, especially if you like keeping more of your own money. You don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket, so what are you waiting for? Hurry to savewithconrad.com.
Always.
Good man.
Well, I wouldn't fib about it, but at 68, 67 years old, 2 months away from being 68, things can get just a little bit foggy from 86.
I know where you're coming from there, buddy. We're talking with Tully Blanchard about 1986. You and Magnum had a tremendous run. The first blood match is still what people talk about. They talk about a lot about your career, but that first blood match in 1986, Terry goes down with that wreck. And that really was a tough time for the entire promotion and for all of us that worked in the promotion.
Yes, that was a tragic blow to the whole company, because Terry's talent, and I think that, in 1985 at Starrcade, when we had the I Quit match, was probably one of the greatest matches that I was ever in. And then to follow that in 86 with the first blood with Dusty, it was dynamic, but Dusty and Terry were very, very close. And, and to have being paralyzed for, I think he laid in a bed for a year.
Yeah. And
they just rotated him to make sure his circulation and stuff. It affected everybody, because I think it affected everybody because we were traveling so much. We were in cars late at night. We were traveling 330 days a year. And we know how close that any of us could be to that very thing.
Right.
And I think it hit everybody in a very tender spot in their hearts.
It's pretty remarkable to go back and look at how important the year 1986 was, but somebody we don't talk about nearly enough these days was a big part of the program, Babydoll. And boy, you were synonymous with her for quite a while. What are some of your favorite memories of working with Babydoll?
I think that that was a very, very, when we did the looking for the perfect woman thing I think that was in 85.
That's right.
The end of 85. No, it was earlier than that because Babydoll gave me the quarters when I knocked out Terry. So that would have been the end of 84.
Okay.
And start of 85. And then most of that, but when we did the I think it was the money match, and then Dusty got Babydoll for 30 days, and all of those things, those were exciting things. Probably the biggest memory was when she dressed up like a police officer and brought me the quarters to use on Terry Allen there in Charlotte. That would have to roll down. And, I think that she is going to be at WrestleCade this Thanksgiving in a couple of weeks. I know I'm going to be there with Arn and FTR. But I think Babydoll is going to be there and JJ is going to be there. So we've got almost the whole group from 86 to be there for wrestling fans to get pictures and autographs. Forgive me for the commercial, but the thing I was telling somebody this last week in Minneapolis right before the pay-per-view up there. I said the thing that was when we met Nicola, it was she was wrestling and touring as Nicola the Lady Giant. And Dusty and I were wrestling in Miami. It was Christmas week, 1984. And we had the Perfect 10 contest. And Tony, I think you saw a lot of those pictures. They were different than there were some 10s, there were some 0s, there were some in betweens.
Just like life. Yep.
Exactly.
Right.
But when we were looking for and couldn't find Sunshine, who had been working for World Class Wrestling and that. And when we got to Miami and Nicola, whose mom and dad were promoted Lubbock, Texas, for the Funks, she was a very beautiful young lady, and but she was 6'1", and she was the Lady Giant.
Right.
And I saw her, and I ran into Dusty's dressing room, and I said, "Dream," I said, "she's got to be Babydoll." And he looked at that, and he looked at her, and finally agreed with me. And so the rest is history.
Wow.
And I think it was as successful of a thing that you could have done with any type of manager or anything like that. And then the things that we did when Dusty slapped her and I slapped her, and it just accentuated the whole thing. And then when JJ became Tully Blanchard Enterprises, that moved us in getting ready for the Four Horsemen years.
Right. And of course, Starrcade was a big part of it. You and Dusty had a great run. Tully, one question before we let you go here. When you first started with Jim Crockett, and I know you and your father had run a territory, and how did, and I know back in the territories, guys went from one territory to the other. How did you first get into Jim Crockett Promotions? When did that all start for you?
Well, I actually, my first year in wrestling was 1977. And I wrestled in Florida right after I graduated. I graduated at midterm. I went to Florida and stayed there from January until May, and didn't really make a lot of money. Got a lot of wisdom, Eddie Graham liked me and worked out with me 3 or 4 days a week. Probably accelerated my career by 3 or 4, 5, 10 years. The knowledge and ring psychology that he poured into me. And I had the opportunity to call Wahoo, and he was up in North Carolina. And I said, can I come up there and work? I said, I'm starving in Florida. And he got me booked up there in May. And so I wrestled the rest of that year in North Carolina. And then the TV and the way they did things in Florida, the way they did things, I took all that knowledge back home at the end of 1977 and worked for my dad. And we started putting all that stuff together. And I wrestled there for the next 6 years. And things started happening that my brother was killed in 1978. That destroyed my family and my parents and things, and you have to keep pressing on.
Right.
And then I was my life was falling apart, and the company was falling apart, and things were falling apart. And I said, how can I? What do I got to do? I got to make money. I got to pay bills. I got to do this stuff. And I said, the wrestling business is the best way to do this. And so I got booked in Kansas City, working for them. Christmas Day of 1983, I started there. And I was booked in St. Louis the end of the month, end of January. And Dory Funk Jr. was the booker for Crockett at that time, and Jim Crockett was there. And the only time I ever really pushed myself, I told Jimmy, we were out at the Marriott at the bar afterwards, after the matches, and I'd had a good match with Buzz Tyler. And I said, Jimmy, if you hire me, I can make you a lot of money. And he said, well, we're drinking and blah, 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 blah. And then Monday he called me and hired me. I gave my notice in Kansas City, and I started February of 84.
Wow.
And there you go.
Do you remember that you and I did a worldwide wrestling telecast together? It was.
I think so.
Yeah, it was very early in 84. I think it was my first time of doing play-by-play ever. You and I worked together, and I think it was Shelby, North Carolina. I can't remember. You know how things go, but for some reason that just...
Well, it was your first doing play-by-play and my first doing play-by-play.
Yeah, and guess what? It's 2021, and we're still getting booked today. How about that?
Well, your voice is a lot better than my body.
Well, we really appreciate the time today. We can see you almost every week now on AEW. Of course, we hope everybody's still tuning in on Wednesdays and Fridays to keep up with not just you, but Tony Schiavone. But man, we've had a great time talking about 1986. And of course, we're about to be watching Starrcade with Mr. Crockett. But before I let you go, I want to get your take on the Great American Bash Tour. 1986 was a 13-city tour, had a lot of musical acts, had a lot of stadium shows. I think the show in Charlotte is still the largest crowd in Jim Crockett history, over 23,000 fans there. And on that show, you had a match with Ron Garvin, who's proud to be an American, the tape fist match. What do you remember about that Great American Bash Tour? And I mean, it feels like a little bit of a rock star lifestyle 35 years ago.
Yeah. I know that Ronnie beat the crud out of me. There's only so many times you can get punched in the head with a taped fist and without it hurting your neck or something. I know he punched me one time and I chipped my teeth.
Oh,
and so I was glad when all those matches got over with, but it was, that was the Great American Bash on tour was something phenomenal. And we did great crowds in a lot of the stadiums, it just didn't look like it. But Charlotte was definitely the largest.
Thanks, Tully. Always good talking to you. We appreciate your time, buddy.
Bless you guys. My pleasure.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money, it's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.